Here's the story, and I know I brought it up last hour, and I'll probably bring it up next hour, and I'll probably bring it up every day until we have an answer on this one. When Joe Biden said he was going to release 30 million barrels of crude oil to help America, so it was an emergency sale. Our strategic oil preserve. Keyword there, strategic, meaning something we would hold on to, we'd have in reserve for strategic purposes like going to war, which will never happen. So he wanted to release 30 million barrels. Now, I thought that goes, to the gas stations or wherever. No. One of the companies that bought it, there were 12 companies, and they were all vetted from the United States, and one of them is Unipec America, which is fantastic. Unitec America, in case you've never heard of it, who has, is the Chinese Petrochemical Corporation. So it's controlled by the Chinese government. So we sold 1 million barrels to China, and I'm wondering, why we did that. Well, I'm sure there was an in there. Sinopec, has worked with the Bidens. Hunter Biden co-founded the private equity firm BHR Partners, and BHR acquired $1.7 billion stake in Sinopec. So that's now Hunter took a minority stake in BHR. He's only got a 10% stake through a LLC that he owns. It's very complex, hard to follow. It's almost like it's intentionally built that way. But and he said he was going to sell that. Of course, there's no record of him doing that at all, and nobody will even ask the question. But I didn't realize when Joe said he was going to help Americans, he specifically meant with the last name Biden. Had no idea that's what I thought. It was like everybody, but we find out now. No, 1 million gallons went to China, and as if that's not bad enough, it was to a company that is 10% is owned, by Hunter. So that's good. By the way,
definition of good. It's an interesting definition of good you have working there. I didn't feel like it was good. But to be fair, you did say 1 million barrels, and it was only 950,000. And that, I think the American people will be fine with that.
Fake news. Fake news. Here's why I'm not concerned about it. Apparently, not everything was a disaster when I went on vacation. The Biden administration has announced it has created a new position to tackle corruption head on, and not domestic corruption. We don't need that. We don't. What? We're talking about international corruption, which is great because I think we're the ones to preach to the world against corruption. Seriously. Anyway, so they're battling international corruption, and Joe Biden's the guy to do it. When he was vice president, he was in charge of Ukraine policy, and he bragged about the arm twisting he did there to root out corruption. Of course, it was to root out the guy who wanted to investigate his son in corruption, but that's just he didn't know, I'm sure. But so he's looking into international corruption. And I'm thinking, while I was on vacation, I was thinking, Russia, China, Iran, how are we going to wrangle them into submission? And I didn't see it coming. Corruption czar. And one who has some real experience. Now, Richard Nephew is the guy who is put in charge. And it's really ironic that a guy named Nephew is being appointed by Joe Biden, in an anti-corruption position. But his name is Richard Nephew, and he's heading up the international anti-corruption efforts. Now, why would you pick him? Why would you? Well, he was working on the special envoy to Iran during the Obama administration, and he served as the nuclear arms and sanctions expert on the team that negotiated the Iranian nuclear deal. You know, the deal that ended up with us flying pallets of $400 million in cash and leaving it in the middle of the airport in the middle of the night in Tehran. He was the guy who got that deal. So he knows a little something about corruption, I'm thinking. And it's good. It's good. World, you've been put on notice. The Anti-Corruption League is coming. If you're not greasing some of the skids, they might have a thing or two to say to you and the rest of the world. So here's some good news. This is from Reuters. Stu, how much was oil when it collapsed the economy in 2008?
It hit $140 a barrel.
$140 a barrel. Now, that is because we as a country are not equipped to pay that much for a barrel of oil. Our entire economy runs on, at its optimum, under $100 a barrel. So anything over $100 sustained is not good. 140 is really our breaking point, or it was in 2008. But now with inflation, adjusted dollars, I'm sure that's $250 a barrel. Now, here's the good news from Reuters. They're saying that oil could go up to $380 a barrel because Russia is now thinking about slashing 5 million barrels a day in retaliation for the price cap that the West has put on there. So now you've got Germany and everybody else freaking out a little bit, but not us. We're just plowing right through. $380 a barrel. Can you imagine how much money this country could make right now if we just became the world supplier of oil and natural gas? We could solve so many problems right now, but we won't. We won't, because gas and oil is a really bad thing. Really? Seemed to do a lot of really good things in the past, and now that we're struggling with it again and its shortage, it seems like it's doing some really bad things, doesn't it?
Well, you're ignoring the change, and it's a massive change in the amount of climate deaths over the past 100 years. It's been incredible.
Really, tell me the stats on those climate deaths.
Well, there has been a large change. I mean, I don't think you deny that.
Well, I haven't heard any of the stats, so I know you're a stat guy. So what are the stats of climate?
Global climate-related deaths are down 98% over that time. But just the 98%, if it wasn't for oil and gas, okay, and their emissions, maybe it would have been 99%. But
wait a minute. So you do have stats, and the climate deaths are down by almost 100%.
Not all. There are still climate deaths, though. It has not been 100%. So this,
right.
And a lot of people might say, well, wait a minute, isn't that entire improvement having to do with fossil fuels and how society has improved in the past 100 years? And sure, you can make that point, but they haven't completely eliminated climate-related deaths.
No.
Why not?
No.
You know
why?
Yeah.
Inequality.
Right. Thank you. Inequality.
Yeah.
Glenn, there's a big climate report due out here soon, and we were talking about this last week. What's the whole point of the climate situation, right? What's the whole point of it, right? The point of it is do people die from climate, right? Like that's the real bottom line number. And if I were to give you two publications, which one has shown the statistics backing up the 98% drop in climate-related deaths? Is it, number one, the UN IPCC report about the climate? Have they ever reported that? Or the number two option, Glenn Beck's An Inconvenient Book? Which one?
I would say it's Glenn Beck's Inconvenient Book.
You are correct. For some reason, the guy who doesn't care about climate at all is the one reporting the near 100% drop in climate-related deaths, while the UN IPCC doesn't include that graph in any of their reports.
And it's interesting that they are talking about climate-related deaths, but they're going to start talking about that. You're going to hear a lot of that beginning this fall, when we have starvation beginning to set in all over the world. We are still living off of last year's harvest. This year's harvest is just starting to be canned and sent out. So everything that you have on your shelf or on your supermarket, most of it is last year's wheat, last year's fruit or vegetables. Now we're going to start to see the problem, and it's going to start rearing its ugly head all around the world very soon. And when it does, they're going to say, this is because of climate problems.
You're right, they are.
This is, they're absolutely going to be. Now the farmers will understand that they need to start growing food without all of these petrochemicals. It only makes it more urgent that we double down on this right now. It's a war.
And as you pointed out at the beginning of the program, Sri Lanka went that route and did wonderfully well with it. In fact, they were able to move thousands of citizens into their presidential palace as a result of that move, which is great for equality.
Right. So if you want the less New York Times version of that, the government was overthrown over the weekend. But climate change.